Hey, so this is Andy. I had just seen on the Facebook group for Marvel Champions, someone had mentioned that they didn't know that you could that you could perform actions off turn. And that just struck me because I love doing that. It's one of my favorite parts of Marvel Champions. So I wanted to give sort of a 101 tutorial on how to do that. So to start off, I wanted to clarify what you cannot do on or off turn. So on your turn, you can change form. You can't change form when it's not your turn. You can play supports and upgrades and allies on your turn. You can do your basic, thwart, attack, recovery on your turn, not off turn. You can attack with allies, thwart with allies on your turn. All of those things you can only do on your turn. But you can also perform actions, of course, and you can play cards from hand, like events that say action. And you can also ask someone if they want to perform an action. That includes playing action cards from hand. That includes using an action on a card that's already out on the board. They can also just offer too. So there's just a little bit of give and take there. It's your turn. So for them to perform it, you really have to allow them to do it. But you can ask them to do it. They can offer to do it. And it provides some amazing opportunities for cooperation and efficiency of play. And to me, some of the most enjoyment of play. So, for example, I want to start off with some of the most common ways that you do actions off turn. Everyone knows Avengers Mansion comes in most starter decks. It says action, exhaust Avengers Mansion, choose a player, that player draws one card. And the cool thing here is it kind of already is indicating that this is a cooperative card. It says choose a player, that player draws one card. But you could be going first and I've got Avengers Mansion. You could ask me, hey, would you be willing to use Avengers Mansion to give me a card? Or I could be like, hey bro, I think I have exactly enough cards in my hand right now. I don't need another card, I don't need another resource, so I'd be happy to use Avengers Mansion on you. Or in a multiplayer game, you might say like, whoever needs it the most, I've got it available this turn. And so what you would do is you would just simply ask me, or I would offer, and then I do it. Action, I do this, I choose a player, you draw a card. Very, very similarly, Helicarrier says, exhaust Helicarrier, choose a player, reduce the resource cost of the next card that player plays this phase by 1. We play cards like this pretty loosely, but really it is an action. So you have to say, you can ask me if you could use my Helicarrier. I could offer, but really it's me who does the action because I own it. And I exhaust it, and I can choose you and reduce the resource cost of the next card that you play. Those are probably the two most common and well-known. Everyone knows these two cards. Another card, though, is Avengers Tower. It says, action, exhaust Avengers Tower, reduce the cost of the next Avenger ally played this phase by 1. And so, of course, you could do that for someone else's Avenger ally. So they could be saying, I'm planning on playing an Avenger, or I could ask, is anyone planning on playing an Avenger? I'd love to just use this card to reduce the cost of the next one, if that would be helpful. So that's another card that I think comes in the core set. No, I think it comes in Captain America. But it's a very, well-known card as well. So those are the most common. They're all basic cards, but these are also quite common uses of off-turn actions. The first one I'm thinking of is Medteam. Medteam says action, exhaust Medteam, and remove 1 medical counter from it, heal 2 damage from a friendly character. The reason why you would want to do this off turn is, say for example, I have Medteam, you have Daredevil, the ally, and he already has 2 damage on him. And so if you were to use him again, it would be, he'd be defeated and discarded. Well, Daredevil is such a high efficiency ally, 2 thwart and 1 damage, is so great. So on my turn, I could offer, hey, I'll exhaust Medteam, remove medical counter, and heal 2 from Daredevil, so that you can use Daredevil on your turn. If I waited until my turn to do that, you would have already now missed the window for you to be able to use an ally's attack or thwart power, which you can only do on your turn. So that's why this has to be sometimes done off turn. Of course, if I was going first, I probably would just do it on my turn, not wait until your turn. But if you're going first and he's already got 2 damage, I would call, and offer to do that. So that's Medteam. Make the call, I think, is a huge one. I think lots of people do this as well. Action, pay the printed cost of an ally in any player's discard pile. Put that ally into play under your control. And the greatest target for this is, of course, Maria Hill. After Maria Hill enters play, each player draws 1 card. This is something that you would want to do on the first player's turn so that everyone, it could be 2, 3, 4 players, all draw a card on or before it's their turn, so they can actually use that card. So Make the Call is a great card to play off turn, especially if it's for someone like Maria Hill. Another person could be Valkyrie, who has enters play, damages a minion. That might be something you want to do off turn. Similarly, Relentless Assault is a great thing to do off turn. So say you have a minion with guard in front of you. It's the only minion on the board. You want to attack the villain. You're happy to take down the minion in front of you first, but I might be like, hey, I've got Relentless Assault. I would love to be able to use this. It can only be used on a minion to deal 5 damage to a minion. And so I could offer to play Relentless Assaults before it's my turn to clear your minions, that you can focus on attacking the villain, but I got this high efficiency attack in on a minion. So that's that. Similarly, Get Over Here. This is a great card to play off turn because very, very often you might be a big heavy hitter like Hulk, but you've got maybe a guard in front of you who has tough. That's a pretty common thing for guards to have. And so you could use Get Over Here. I could use Get Over Here to ping that minion in front of you so that now maybe you can hit him with Hulk and kill him, or use an overkill attack to finish him off. But so a common use of playing attack events off turn is to either ping off tough off of a minion or off of the villain, or to clear a minion that has guard, or both. And then this actually has a secondary thing of if you have the aerial trait, engage that enemy. So for a few heroes, that can also actually be helpful. This could damage a minion, but then pull it towards you, so that if it was a guard minion, I can actually pull it off of you and you're free to attack now. Another use, I think, is with cards like For Justice, and this probably most relates to cards like, side schemes that have Crisis, the Crisis icon, which doesn't allow you to remove threat from the main scheme until it's taken care of. You might be able to remove 2 threat this turn, but there's 4 threat on a side scheme that has Crisis. The most efficient thing that turn might be for me to play For Justice on your turn, so that then your hero or your ally can thwart and remove threat from the main scheme, instead of you just removing a couple off of this side scheme, and then I'm left holding For Justice, which is going to be now kind of, inefficiently played to finish off that side scheme, and I can't do anything for the main scheme. So that's a few more common things. Now we're getting into some actually cooler things, which similarly clear the area. If we're, removing threat and getting rid of schemes, whoever has cleared the area very well may want to play it off turn to make sure that they're the one who is removing the last threat from a scheme, so that they can get that bonus of, if this removes the last threat on that scheme, draw 1 card. And similarly with Stealth Strike. So again, you've got a minion with guard in front of you. Maybe you knock off the toughness, but then I'm like, hey, I can do Stealth Strike right now, get that guard killed for you, and since it's defeating an enemy, remove 2 threat from a scheme. So again, a lot of this comes into the territory of just efficiency. And if you just communicate, you can get that efficiency. Skilled Investigator, this I think is an amazing card, but it's truly amazing when you just coordinate with your teammates. So, 2 or 3 of you might have Skilled Investigator out, but you want to make sure that you typically are doing it when as many of you are in hero form as possible, because it's a hero response. You also have to, you'd like to do it earlier in the round if possible, so that everyone gets the card on or before their turn. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of coordination of like, hey, we're all in hero form right now. I've got a for justice. I can get rid of that side scheme right now on your turn if you let me play for justice. That will trigger Skilled Investigator for all of us, and we all get a card. You'll get a card on your turn, and it just works that way. So Skilled Investigator is great like that. Night Nurse, very common use off turn. It says exhaust the Night Nurse and remove 1 medical counter from her, heal 1 damage from a hero, and discard 1 status card from it. So similarly, you're Captain Marvel, you can thwart for 3, but you're confused. I should totally offer, I can use the Night Nurse on your turn. I'll use the Night Nurse to heal 1 damage and remove your confusion, so that now you can thwart for 3. If she'd waited until it was my turn, then that would have been really inefficient. She either wouldn't have gotten an action in, or she had to attack instead of thwarting, or she thwarted to get rid of the confuse, which is just an inefficient way of getting rid of that status card. A few leadership cards, a lot of these just don't make sense unless you can play them off turn. So things like Morale Boost, choose a hero until the end of the round. That hero gets +1 thwart, +1 attack, and +1 defense. You're totally going to want to play this on or before the turn of whichever hero you choose. So again, if you're Captain Marvel and I've got, Miss Marvel. I don't know why Miss Marvel would run Morale Boost, but clearly it's not very good for Miss Marvel. And Captain Marvel, it's great. So I would play it on whenever, before your turn. So either on my turn if I'm going first, or if you're going first, I'd play it, choose you to get that +1 thwart, +1 attack, +1 defense. And same with Lead from the Front, which is going to give all your characters that you control +1 thwart and +1 attack. Inspiring Presence or Get Ready, both ready and ally. And you'd want to do that, of course, again, before that ally, so the ally can now activate again this turn. That's usually the efficiency of readying an ally. So those are a few of the kind of secondary, but more. There's many more ways that you can do that. There's so many. Any alter ego action, any hero action has a possibility that it could be used in a really dynamic way by being played off turn. One thing I'll step in here and say though, is you have to remember, if it says alter ego action, you have to be in alter ego form to play it. If it's hero action, you have to be in hero form to play it. So you have to be clever and aware of that, because, I could be in alter ego form and it's your turn first. I can't play a stealth strike on your turn since I'm in alter ego. And so definitely pay attention to that on your turn, that you don't cheat. But even sometimes you might have to think before even it gets to your turn, I want to be in hero form so that when, it's his turn first, and that way I can do this action off turn that will help him. The more you play, the more you might be thinking about those sorts of kind of next level strategies. These are now just a bunch of random cards that I think have really fun and interesting ways of being used off turn. So things like Army of Ants, this is just such an efficient, it says deal 1 damage to an enemy. And again, you have to be in hero form. You have to actually be in tiny hero form specifically. You can exhaust it, deal 1 damage to an enemy. So a great way to take off the toughness or to finish off a guard minion so that, Hulk can Hulk smash or whatever it is. Toe-to-Toe is a really interesting card. I think it relates to playing cards off turn in 2 different ways. So the villain might already be stunned, and you might be wanting to play, Mockingbird. But you're like, this is inefficient because the villain's already stunned. I feel bad playing Mockingbird because there's no one to stun. I could call for an action, say, well, I'll do toe-to-toe, choose an enemy, that enemy attacks you, deal 5 damage to that enemy. So I play toe-to-toe, it attacks me, but because he's stunned, it clears the stun. And now you on your turn are free to play your Mockingbird and get that efficiency of stunning the villain again. So that's a great thing to do. Although toe-to-toe, I'll say another way that it can be used is it's my turn and I've got toe-to-toe, but I really don't want to be attacked by the enemy. You might play tackle and stun the enemy. So now I can play toe-to-toe and not be afraid of getting attacked at that very moment. Another common, Golden City. If I have Golden City out and I'm in alter ego form, I 100% of the time will ask my teammates if I can just use this immediately. The turn starts and it might be your turn first, or there might be multiple turns in front of me. But I ask to use cards like Golden City that just says draw 2 cards, because the more, by doing that, I see those cards, I know what cards are coming, and I can have better and more informed conversations with the team in terms of communicating about what I will be capable of doing that turn. Whether I can be counted on to thwart or to remove these minions or do whatever it is. So whenever there's things like that really don't affect anything else but give you greater information to be able to communicate more, I say do it, call for it, just ask if you can do it. This is a little bit similar. Defender of the Nine Realms. I love playing this card whenever it's at all feasible. I just like to push my luck with it. But I like to do it oftentimes when it's not my turn. So if you go first, I can play Defender of the Nine Realms, discards cards, we get a minion in play, engaged with me, and we remove 3 threat from a scheme. Because the minion is engaged with me, I then draw cards with Thor. And now I have drawn cards, so I have more information about what I can do that turn. And oftentimes for Thor, since he has such a small hand size, that could be the total game changer from I have no idea what I'm going to do and I have very little options, to those 2 new cards I'm drawing could really radically change and open up my options. But also, because that minion is now engaged with me before it's even my turn, we can now plot out what's the most efficient way to deal with that minion that we just willingly put into play with me. Is it possible for you to help out and knock out this minion, or however it is. But you could be more involved with it since it's still your turn. So I like to do that in that way. Press the advantage. This is less something you would do off turn, but it more relates to off-turn actions. It says deal 2 damage to an enemy. If that enemy is stunned or confused, draw 1 card. So if I have this card, I have nothing to stun or confuse the villain. I might ask around the table, does anyone have anything that can stun or confuse the villain right now? So like a tackle, or however, an action card or action ability that can stun or confuse the villain. So if they can do that off turn, that now is going to be able to then allow me to play this and draw a card because the enemy is stunned or confused. This is a really fun, funky one. Team building exercise. It kind of feels like other resource related cards. It says exhaust team building exercise. Play a card from your hand that shares a trait with your hero, reducing its resource cost by 1. But this is pretty revolutionary in a small way, which is that this is a card that could kind of allow you to get around the normal rules that you can't just play cards like allies, supports, and upgrades from your hand when it's not your turn. That's not something you can do. You can play actions, you can do hero actions, alter ego actions, normal actions, but you can't normally just play allies from your hand. Team building exercise is an action though, so you can do this, and it's a way to play a card from your hand that can include an ally. So you could play someone like Valkyrie, who's going to immediately deal 2 or 3 damage, or you could play Nick Fury if you share the spy trait maybe. And again, you play Nick Fury, draw your cards, and now you know what you're looking at for the rest of the turn. There's a ton of different ways you could use this. One of the kind of funniest ways, I haven't done this yet, but I think it's pretty cool because it gets around something. Quinjet, has the Avenger trait, so you can play it with team building exercise as long as you're in hero form and you're an Avenger. And it says, response, after your turn begins, place 1 time counter on Quinjet. Well, if you play it before it gets to your turn, you're actually going to get that time counter basically a turn early, which is really cool. So for free, you could play Quinjet, and you're already getting a time counter on it because if you played it before it got to your turn. So that's a cool thing. And then lastly, I was just going to throw out a few Hawkeye cards. Different heroes have different amounts of cards different numbers of cards that really are conducive to playing off turn. I think Hawkeye, he has so many hero action attacks and thwarts with his arrows that I think he is actually one of the best. I find myself the most often playing almost my entire hand before it even gets to my turn with Hawkeye. And a couple of those reasons could be, again, when you're talking about guard minions or whatever, explosive arrow says exhaust Hawkeye's bow and choose a player, deal 3 damage to the villain and each minion engaged with that player. So I could play this to get rid of a bunch of minions, including, your guard minions, so that you can keep moving forward. Or similarly, electric arrow stuns an enemy and deals 3 damage to it. So with anything that has to do with stunning, if I want to stun it before it gets to my turn, this is really handy. Cable arrow is removes 3 threat from a scheme. So this is the kind of thing that you're going to have access to all the time, especially with his quiver. He's going to have things like cable arrow just sitting in his quiver. He can even do his quiver off turn to look for arrows, stick a cable arrow in there, and then off turn shoot it, and off turn ready his bow again, off turn shoot another arrow. So Hawkeye has some of the most dynamic, naturally kind of native dynamic off turn actions available to him. So yeah, that's just a short summary of some of the ways you can do this. I probably missed some major ways that it's used, but I really think it's so helpful for card draw for yourself or for others. It's so helpful for getting rid of tough. It's so helpful for getting rid of guard minions. Sometimes dealing with retaliate minions even. It can be helpful to play off-turn actions. For healing of allies, it's great. For getting rid of and dealing with crisis side schemes in the most efficient manner. And then I would say a big thing is also for finishing minions. You never want to spend more damage or spend more threat removal than is necessary to get rid of a minion or a side scheme. I would also say finishing the villain is a huge thing. You don't want to overspend on finishing the villain's first stage. You don't care about the last stage because you just want to kill him. But when you're finishing the villain's first stage, you want to use exactly enough damage and hopefully no more to finish him. And then also I would say with finishing the villain, when he flips, so many villains have a lot that happens. Many of them bring out a minion. Many of them bring out a scheme. Many of them bring out or make the villain tough or stun people. And so doing that usually earlier in the round is often better because then more players have the ability to deal with those things. So say, for example, you're the justice player and I'm the aggression player and it's your turn first. I might be like, hey, let's finish, let's say Ultron stage 2. So that Ultron stage 3 comes out now, Ultron's imperative comes out, that side scheme, and you're better set up for removing it immediately this turn, instead of us waiting until it gets around to my turn to finish Ultron, because then we're looking at leaving Ultron's imperative on the table potentially, and therefore having to deal with the hazard icon that it brings. So finishing villains in the most efficient way and finishing them earlier in the round is huge. And also, I would say, playing off turn, usually I'm thinking of it in terms of playing before it's my turn, but occasionally it feels a little more stressful to do this, but occasionally you're actually waiting to play a card. So you would like finish your whole turn except for having one action card in hand, and you could play on the other person's turn after you've gone. So that actually happens sometimes. I'll have like, say a whatever attack event, like a piercing strike, but I only have one other card in hand, and I just really can't do anything with my last two cards. It's unfortunate. I was kind of inefficient there. I'm sitting there with two cards I can't use. Well, as the play progresses, maybe you didn't have any way to play Maria Hill earlier in the round, so now you're playing Maria Hill. Now I draw a card, and now suddenly I have enough to pay for a piercing strike. So I could call for an action and say, hey, I can actually play piercing strike now. So sometimes you couldn't have played it on your turn, so you wait. Other times there's something you're waiting to see before playing an event. And so you can also play sometimes by waiting and playing on your friend's turn later in the round. So that's just a little introduction. I'd love to hear anyone else's thoughts or other cards that they love to play off turn. And yeah, thanks for watching.